Okay, we should be live. So, hello everybody. Welcome to the very sometimes frequent podcast, the Vita Life podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Presley. Joining me for this very Vita Island centric discussion is my first guest of 2022, Barry from Lillymo Games. Barry, thank you so much for joining on this live show so late in the night. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I love the Vita, so interested to see what we're going to talk about today.
I'm waiting for the day I find someone who's a developer who has made Vita games who's like just a total a hole. Because like I've just been very lucky, and I know they're out there, I'm sure. But like every developer I've ever reached out to has just been nothing but like the most like very open and like very communicative and like very nice for it. So it's nice that not only is like the community of players really nice, it's like all the devs who are still kind of out there and active online are kind of out there for it. So yeah, if anyone here is not aware, the PlayStation Vita turned 10 years old in Japan at the end of the year in December of 2021, and next month in February will be the Western 10th anniversary. So basically, this is me kind of revitalizing this podcast as often as I can, getting developers and people in the Vita Island community on here to talk about the system. So obviously, you're a really interesting perspective as a developer and a publisher of Vita games, not only digitally but also physically. But in case anyone out there does not know who you are, who are you? Who is Lillymo Games, and what does the Vita mean to you outside of work?
Okay, so I'm Barry, and I do like the programming and most of the game design and a little bit of the music and sound stuff, although not on Habroxia too. Um, and I'm the founder of Lillymo Games, and we like to make basically retro style or retro inspired games, pixel art games for we started on the PS4 and Vita. Now we're doing it on all consoles. And we like to make all sorts of old school style games, from platformers to brick breakers, shooters. We're gonna about to start full development on a JRPG. So yeah, we're just trying to remake all the games that we loved from our childhood, and maybe put a new twist on where we can.
So this is a weird one for me since Perils of Baking was your first like actual published game as Lillymo, correct?
Yeah.
So is it weird that you're now? I guess would you call the next release of it? Is this? Would you call it a remaster, a re-enhanced, a remake? Like, is it weird that like you're less than 10 games in and you're like, it's time to remaster? Let's go. Let's craft it up.
Yeah, so every project I work on, I have an attitude of just I mean, I go into it with an idea, but where the work goes is what we end up making. So with Habroxia 2, we started making sort of like a deluxe version of Habroxia 1, and then just the ideas were flowing, and we turned it into Habroxia 2 because it just made sense with where we were going. And the
Hmm.
same thing kind of happened with Perils, where our plan was we're going to do like an update, a free update for all of our games, and bring them onto the new consoles with PS5. But with Perils, I did all the art for that game, and like, I'm not an artist. It was out of necessity that that was the case. So we went through and redid every single art asset. Basically, it's a whole new game. I guess you'd call it a remake.
I think it's always a little bit trickier with like pixel art games as well because I think like when you look at a 3D game, it's a little easier to tell the lines between a remake and a remaster. Out of curiosity for you, would you say do you kind of view this as like your second chance with Perils of Baking? Because I feel like when you look at especially Habroxia 1, I think it was such a step up in terms of overall quality compared to Perils of Baking that it wasn't like the first game was bad, but it wasn't one of those things of like it wasn't easily kind of comparable. Like for me, it was one of those things of I was aware of Perils of Baking, but I was very late into finally playing it. Whereas like Habroxia 1, I was like, I'm in. I'm in. I'm gonna play this right away.
Yeah, I'd agree with that completely, and that's how I felt as well. Like, I haven't played Perils in a long time. I just saw Brian from PS5 Trophies. He was doing a playthrough on YouTube that someone tagged to me, and I was just like, I can't watch this because it's hard for me to look at my old art, and that was the first project I ever worked on, and also the first project we released, and it's I don't know, it's just hard to look back on your early work and see so many things you would have done better. So basically, it just turned into an opportunity to make a better version, and yeah, like not repent for my sins or anything, but like
Hey, this is no Life of Black Tiger. I didn't hear anyone who bought Perils of Baking complaining that loudly.
yeah, I guess I just felt like so how it started actually was we were talking about doing a collection of all of our games, and I was just thinking like I don't want people to like play the old version of Perils and think that's what our standard of quality is. Like so we wanted to do a really good update, and it just turned into this remake where well, you'll find out soon, but we've added like it's a whole new game. That's all. That's
So
the best way I can put it.
I have a very weird complaint actually with Perils of Baking, and if anyone has ever told you this besides me, I'd be very surprised. My largest complaint with you about that game is why did we need to go back in time and blackmail East Asia Soft? Where was the physical release of Perils of Baking 1? That's the $1 million question.
Oh, yeah, I guess it just wasn't in the cards. I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. When I first contacted them, I was telling them about Habroxia. I said, "Oh, and I have this game Perils of Baking I've already made. Would you be interested in publishing it in Asia?" And at the time they were like, "Oh, we don't not yet, not right now, and we don't think we'd be interested in physical." But I hadn't even asked about that, so and then I never did afterwards. So we never really pitched it to anyone as a physical release. So they did decline on it, but I never really pitched it, I guess.
It was just one of those funny things of me for there's like a couple of like devs out there for like I would say like in terms of prolific indie devs who like kind of like hit the perfect amount of like I think of like Poppy Games, otherwise known as like Wolf Games and stuff, or like Orion on Twitter of like for whatever miracle they got every one of their like handful of Vita games on there physically, and that's like what I always imagine is like that's like gotta feel really nice of like okay all of this is kind of like able to live on there for it. And one of the big things I guess for me was when we were coming into the last couple of releases, I had like kind of just hoped out of like some like maybe there was just going to be like some one of the weird final games was like a weird indie compilation, which would have been incredibly hard because doing any sort of compilation like multiple trophy sets on one Vita card is so hard to do. But like there are so many great games out there that I think are hard to justify for like a $35 release. But like maybe if like you and like three other devs like were able to like bundle it on one cart, would have been like a cool little send off or whatever, you know.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Now, for you though, because like I said before, you're not. It's not like you're just a developer and publisher. You actually also play and like the system. When did you get into the PlayStation Vita in terms of playing it or collecting it, whatever one came first?
I got it. So I believe there was like a pre-order bundle where you got like a week early
Do you
in
remember
Canada,
what
right?
came with that bundle?
Was it like little
It
deviants
was. It was
and a
like
case and a memory card or something like
this
that?
hideous case, a 4 GB memory card, and little
Yeah.
deviants. It was like, could you have like? Because like the funniest thing about the Vita is like, well, the one thing I will never let people say is it had one of the best launch lineups ever. Like it launched with so many
Yeah.
crazy games, and the fact that they were like, hey, let's put our weakest launch game for this week early bundle. It was just such a weird thing for it. Whereas like that's funny though. Yeah. So while I hold myself up there as like I don't know anyone who's more like comic book nerdy guy levels for the system with me. I actually didn't get it until all the way up until October of that year because I was waiting for Persona 4 Golden along with just like money and other things at the time. Like I just got out of high school, but I didn't get it until that white Assassin's Creed bundle later on that year. So
Oh,
that was at least that. I think what was funny is like they started the system terribly with bundles, but they at least got better over time. Like there was the Walking Dead one, Assassin's Creed. They did a play like one of my favorite bundles. I think people always forget about is they did like a PlayStation Plus one that was like here's the Vita and an entire PlayStation Plus collection plus a year of it. It was like one of those funny things of like Like they did bad jobs in terms of marketing in some ways, but there were others where like they did so many bundles like people have no idea about. Whereas like most people probably just think of like Madden and Call of Duty Black Ops.
Yeah, I think other than that, I've bought a few other Vitas because well, it's funny. My OG Vita that I got a week early just died. Well, it didn't die. I dropped it in bed like a week
Oh,
ago. In the left, it hit a hard surface, and the left stick just doesn't respond now. But
that's
I bought a few others, so I've got some backups, and I just loaded up another OLED with all of my games I was playing.
it's like my greatest fear because like I still have my launch system, like the one I got in 2012. Like my greatest fear is it's gonna die one day. I don't know what's gonna happen. Like it's gotten a couple nicks and scuffs. Like it's, but I've always had like cases and things around it. But like my one, it's like I've like had to tell people like I will unironically be depressed if this system ever broke on me, just because of like how much I still actively play it and use it on a daily basis.
Yeah, for sure. I still play mine. I had a little bit of a dip there for like maybe a month that I didn't play it. I was playing a little bit of Switch, but other than that, I've played it like I don't know, pretty much every night since it came out.
For you though, like what kind of games do you like to play? Like we've talked about like RPGs a lot, like in our like personal time, like before. But like what kind of games are in your collection?
Oh, I mean, I've played pretty much. I mean, I've probably touched every like well-reviewed game on the system.
Oh, don't
Yeah, I
tempt me.
like
I can pull some weird ones out of my
what you
ass. Don't.
get.
Okay.
You probably have a few. I know there's some I haven't. What have you
Have
got?
you played? I'm gonna think of like one that's kind of mainstream, but people don't think about. Did you ever play on Metal?
On Metal.
The,
Yes, but not much.
it's
I have on Epic on or what's is on Metal the one that just came out on physical?
yes, yeah, that was the one that came out
Yeah, I
last
have
year.
that on physical. I started that. I haven't played much of it though, just because of time.
Oh yeah, how do you feel about this by the way? Because you guys never really got a chance to do this, and I remember Colin mentioned it like a week or two ago about kind of wanting to do this. But how do you feel about physical exclusives? Like obviously, when the system sort of started winding down in 2019. And physical cutoff was looming. You guys were there, obviously, with Habroxia too, but you still had I forget whenever it was you submitted it. I know the build was a couple of months before its actual release, but was it one of those things where, like, if it was possible, would you have been up to a physical exclusive? If it meant its release is physically exclusive on the Vita and there's no way to do it digital, like, would you have been open to that? Like, how do you feel about that in general?
Uh, sorry. If I had the opportunity to release a game on Vita only physical, but the digital option was off the table, then I would be down for it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was like choosing to just do physical instead of digital, I don't think I would ever make that call. I think I would always want to have it available like on the store for forever, hopefully,
Yeah, and
to download.
I think one of the things that a lot of those physical exclusive games get a bad rap for is it's not like they didn't want to do digital. I think a lot of it was like it didn't make
The
sense.
hassle.
Yeah, it's like a lot of those was like it's a game publishing in a separate region, so it didn't really make sense to add like a new trophy list to the play. Because like most people don't know this, but like if you want to upload a similar version of your game to the PlayStation Store back when you could, you had to delist the original. So let's say if you were able to actually get this new Perils of Baking on the Vita Store, they would have made you delist the original. Oh, still there?
Hello?
There you go. Sorry, I'm not. Did I cut off on your end?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I heard what you said. Yeah. The replacing the game wouldn't be possible.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's
how would that
interesting.
have made you feel?
Um, I don't know. Like, I don't know exactly what the restriction would be, right? Because it's not like we're release. Like, I don't want to get into the details, but it's not going to be released as Perils of Baking. You know what I mean? It's going to be a
Sure.
new
Yeah.
title.
I think in the examples that we've had out there, it's a little bit more cut and dry. Of like, okay, this is really the same game at the end of the day. Like, the original Retro City Rampage got delisted because they did the DX version. And
Oh, okay.
if anyone remembers this, shout out to you for being a really big RPG nerd like myself. Dragon Fantasy Book One.
Yeah, I
That
did. I saw that be updated, and I feel like that game's been updated a few times over the years and platforms, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, that was a funny one of like started as a iOS game, then a PS3 Vita pub fund game, and then it went to Wii U, died in like no one bought me jail forever, and then finally went back to PS4 and Vita.
Yeah, I feel like I bought it on PS3 like a long time ago, and I've been getting entitlements to new versions of it across platforms under different names and being like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah, the original one just got totally wiped from Vita because that was the only way they could.
The decision to be like, because you have to pay for a PEGI rating just for the EU Vita release of your game, and it's like not applied, or at least that was the case at the very end. And it's not applied to like any other platform or any other region. So like that was like one additional thing just to get it on the Vita store, just in that region. And then like things fell apart with the store where they broke the image icons for all of our games, and Habroxia 2 never showed up on the new releases, so how do people even know it's for sale?
Oh yeah, there was
That
like
was on the
last
EU
like
store.
the last couple of weeks before like they had announced the store was closing. It was like, yeah, PS3 and Vita stores were just a ghost town, and B were like they hadn't been actually updated in forever. Like no one instructs you how to buy their game for like when it like it should be like, hey, we're in the new releases section. Let alone it being something like, hey, search the game, make sure you don't have any letters missing, and pray that you find it.
Yeah, there's I can like totally see why any company would look at how the Vita was being treated, the storefront was being treated, and figure it's not worth their time to release on it.
Yeah, it was always such a weird catch-22 of like I think for smaller cases there was never a time of me being like, "Hey man, I can't believe you didn't want to port random X game to it." But then there were a lot of other ones where like I have a lot of games that I'm still like, I don't know what you were thinking about not bringing this here. Like one of my biggest will still forever be Catherine. Like they made this amazing port of Catherine on the Vita with all the bells and whistles of the PS4 version, and they just never brought it out because gave up, I guess. And it really stinks too because like it's such a great port technically. Like if Digital Foundry still cared about PlayStation Vita games, like they would have made a video about Catherine on there because I don't know, do any of your games, do you know if you have to overclock any of them, like so you can't like do any background music or look at the trophies and any of the games like that?
No, they're all left to let you like look at your trophies and sync and so forth.
So yeah, like a lot of games, even like games that you would probably not expect would have to do that. I feel like after like 2018, a lot like you just kind of expected all of these games to run on Vita. They're just doing overclock by default, you know?
Yeah, we can kind of get away with it because we're doing the whole retro low
You know
res type
what?
of thing.
I have some retro games I could show you that I will not mention here that are
The
like
don't, yeah, that's true. That's true. I know what you're talking. I've played a few of
there's
those.
some that I'm like I don't think this game running at 15 frames a second with 8-bit graphics needs the overclock right now, but I mean, hey, it's technically running, so it's got that going for it. But the cool thing with that one was like they had this crazy game with all these like visual features going on. No overclocking needed. Like they like for whatever reason, like the few developers that were still kicking in Japan, I think like the Vita is one of those weird systems of like it's one of the last systems I can really think of that Japan really had a lot of technical flexing that America either never caught up to or never really wanted to put the money into. Because, like, obviously there are a lot of Western games that, like, look technically amazing without really pushing the system to its max. Like, you think Killzone, you think Wipeout, Uncharted. But then, obviously, those stopped after, like, 2 or 3 years. And then all of these games that are technically really, really impressive still, like Ys 8, Freedom Wars, and, like I said, like, Catherine and Persona, like, even the dancing games. Like, the models like that they're running there like are surprisingly really really good, and they're not doing anything that the system can't handle. From like a developer point of view, like do you think was that ever one of those things for you of like did you ever think about that in terms of like there was a lot of indie support in the West, but there was never a lot of like even the indies that were out there. There wasn't really anyone kind of showing off Japan in terms of graphics. There was never like a Western showpiece after like let's say 2014 for the system.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the sad fate of the Vita. Really, is that there's a big burst of that at the start, and for a little while after, and then after a few years, it was basically just Japan that was working in the AAA space.
I will at least say because Japan was so weirdly committed to it as a portable, it at least did give us some like super weird games that we should never have gotten on the system. Like I will never forget. High School of the Dead is this very overly sexualized Japanese anime, and they thought, okay, we have the licensing rights for this game. What should we do? Let's make a slot machine. It's just a slot machine that plays clips from the show, and that's the whole game. And I'm like, good for you
I haven't
guys.
played that one. You got me on that one. I haven't played that.
So like, there are just like other like weird. Actually, another one of I don't think these games ever get enough credit, but are really, really, I think, technically impressive when you compare it to other ports, like on the Switch. I think Tecmo Koei doesn't ever get enough love. I think
Oh,
what
I agree. I
I
agree
think
there.
like when you look at how much is going on something like some of those later Dynasty or Samurai Warriors games, like they really pushed that system hard without overclocking it still, which was so crazy. And even there are funny cases where if you look at their Attack on Titan 2 game, Attack on Titan 2 came out on everything, including PS Vita and the Switch. Even though we never got the Vita version in the West, the Vita version has better performance than
In
the
the
Switch
Switch.
version, which is insane.
Yeah, I love playing the Atelier games as well on the Vita.
Oh yeah, yeah, Gust. Man, I don't know what Gust. Gust was like. So like back in like the portable days, yeah, it was like I don't know how you guys are putting out this many games. It like should probably be more concerning, but like no one ever really talks about like how horrendously like large their teams are. Oh, I will give this team a shout out, even though they are unfortunately in the news for uh, probably working too hard culture. I am amazed that Warner Brothers kept giving Telltale Games, sorry, Traveler Tales Games, TT Games, money
Oh,
for
okay.
Vita ports. Because one of the funny things with all those Vita Lego games is they got to a point where like they had a really hilarious dips and valleys of like when they came out it was PS3 level quality or PSP depending on the game. And then they were like, okay, we give up and we're just going to give you the crappy iOS version of the game. And then for
Yeah, I
whatever
remember
reason, they
that.
were like, okay, we're gonna make a unique version of this game with a specific open world made just for the Vita. It was like, that's you didn't need to do that, but I appreciate you doing that for Lego Force Awakens and Marvel's Avengers.
Yeah, I played not all of them, but most of the Lego games as well. I know exactly what you're talking about. There was that one Marvel game where it was just like a iOS game, and it was like really frustrating, I
What
guess.
sucked was it was for Lego Marvel's superheroes, the really good one on consoles. Like the console one was the first game with voice acting, open world. It was really ambitious, and then for whatever reason they just kind of given up at that point, and they were like, just give them the iOS one, which is such a shame because like that's one of their like that's literally their highest rated game of all time, and you're when you're playing it on this system, you're like the PSP could the PSP would make this look bad by comparison.
Yeah, I remember one I liked was I can't remember whether it was I think it was The Hobbit. I get confused between The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings games, but there was one where you could specifically just like tap on like the character you had to change into to use their ability would appear over their head, and you could just like tap on it and insta change into them. And that
That
was
would
such a nice touch
yeah
from having to go through
that was the Hobbit
200
one for sure.
characters and find which one has the ability you need or remember which abilities these guys have. That was such a nice little convenience.
It's a yeah. I went on a stint of showing people how I'm bad with my money last year, and I bought every one of the ironically every one of those Koei Tecmo games and every one of those Lego games on the Vita because I was like, even when these are bad, they're still interesting. You know, like they're not like so bad I like regret playing it. It's like still interesting enough, and like one of these days, I'm sure I will make a 9 hour long video review talking about every Lego game and why I would not recommend other people doing the same.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I've played probably 80 to 90% of them.
Oh, do you have, because I know you also have a pretty sizable collection. What's the one thing in your collection that you own but you know is genuinely really bad?
Um,
At least like that comes to mind. It doesn't have to be the worst, but it's like I own this, but like it's pretty bad.
I don't know. The thing is, so I have about, I don't know, I think I have 100 or so physical games. Are you talking digital or
It
physical
could be it could be
collection?
it could be either physical or digital.
Oh, geez, I don't want to call someone out, actually. I actually don't want to answer that.
That's
I have an
okay.
answer in my head, though.
Um, I will say one that comes to mind is actually a really recent release, but I'm proud to own it because it's so weird. Did you ever pick up Project Sense last year?
Project Sense.
It was the 2D cyberpunk ghost story game.
Yeah, I'm remembering the game. I'm trying to remember if I purchased it because I sometimes I just like purchase anything that comes out on Vita and I'll get to it later.
Hmm.
Especially since like development time, I just like
That would
don't
have
get
that
to
would have
as many
been
games
literally
as I
one. I
buy.
think it like went on sale like the month Habroxia 2 went out. So
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. I just don't remember if I own it. I haven't played it, I can tell you that.
it's it's one of the technically worst games I've ever seen on the system, which is hilarious because it's just a bunch of like 2D sprites in Unity. But what's funny about it is it's so technically ambitious, it's impressive how bad it is. Like, I remember the first thing I did when I booted up the game was I loaded up the credits. And by my regards, the credits was a 3D sequence of like zooming in around and everything, and it's literally running at like single frames. And I'm like, if the credits runs this bad,
Ooh,
like the fact that this made it through cert, I was like, I'm in, baby. Like this'll just be something to like have forever. Like, and I like it. Like
Explore.
it's not like it's one of those funny things of it's bad literally just technically. I think design wise it's very
Okay.
interesting. There's not a lot of like horror games on the system like that in general. So even though it's like a very technically poor game, it still is interesting enough to kind of be like a conversation piece.
Yeah, I think if it came out right around Habroxia too, I bet there's probably some stress at the dev or the port house to get that thing out in time. That's too bad happened.
I'll, you know what? I'll give also another bit of credit. I forget the dev's name, but the house who ported it and published it on consoles, Top Hat Games. A lot of respect to them. Before it went on sale, they did straight up tell people, "Hey, this does not run well."
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
which like to be fair makes sense in terms of yeah, you should probably warn people about the state of it. But also, it's one of those things of like, I think they weren't like there was nothing forcing them to say that about their game, and like they knew it was a Kickstarter game, whereas like it's better to have warned people about the state of the final product and been like, hey, you paid for this version, we made it happen, here it is, we
Oh,
got
so
it
they had
to.
an obligation as well. So that's I was about to say they don't even have the option to not release it then? Is that what it was?
Well, they would have had the option to not release it, but it was like they had already taken money from East Asia Soft. They had already taken money from Kickstarter, so like it would have just like
Yeah.
really sullied their like reputation in a lot of ways for it. So I appreciate them putting it out, being upfront with people about it. Like the only way you could have really been burned by it, I would say, was like if you bought the physical expecting it to be something completely different. Whereas like at least everyone I know who owns it is like, hey, this is like one of the rarest games on the system now. It's interesting. There's not a lot of stuff out there like it. It's just prepare to be very patient. It's not like it's making your system break or anything like that terribly bad.
Yeah, gotcha.
So actually though, talking about publishing, oh man, Red Heracross in chat, I do not agree with you. Says for a game you regret buying is Drive Girls. I'm not saying Drive Girls is good. But Drive Girls is literally just female transformers beating up other robots. It's
Yeah,
not.
I've looked at that one in the store and I've been curious, but I haven't bought it yet.
Drive Girls is one of those things. If that game will never be rare, I say now. Um, it's like if you ever find it for like $15, pick it up. It's really stupid fun. Like if you've ever played um, because it looks like a Warriors game, but it's like just in tiny arenas. So if you've ever fought like arena battlers, like the Hyperdimension Action Neptunia games, or the Sinra and Kagura games, like they play just like that.
Yeah, played both of those.
Yeah, so like that's one of those ones of like if the worst game in your collection is Drive Girls, then I think you have a pretty all right collection outside of unless you have Shame. So if you have Shame, I understand saying Drive Girls. But no, for you though, talking about physical publishing, one of the like I said earlier, the way I had kind of learned about Lillymo, I guess in a way that really stuck with me was your first release of Habroxia, and I remember seeing it. It was one of those interesting times. I would say it was before Vita was really getting to that. Oh my god, here we go! like things are going to get like I think like 2019, 2020, and 2021 were like okay, every physical game is a marathon. Like we were still kind of in the it's still fun and easy going to buy these games. So like for her Baroxy was one of those funny ones of like telling everybody I knew who'd be a fan of it was like, hey, this looks like a really good shmup. Um, it was super cheap digitally, which made it good as well. Like so even if people I knew didn't pick up the physical release, it was nice just to recommend to everybody because like trying to think, did it just launch on PS4 and Vita, or did it also launch on PC?
No, it's still not out on PC though. We're gonna bring it there when we do the full update
Mm-hmm.
treatment for it. But it launched on Vita, PS4, and I think it launched on Switch at the same time.
Okay.
And then it came to Xbox a little later.
So yeah, like that was how I like really kind of discovered a lot of your work for it. And what's funny was I might be mistaken. I think another way of like how it popped up in my head is I remember the physical is how I'd heard about it first. I think was that how you and Colin started talking? Because didn't he do like a let's play of it on his channel, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, so that kind of happened in the background. Just I think it was just before the physical release, and I had sent Colin a code for Perils back in the day, and he contacted me when I was working on Habroxia 1, asking me just like throwing ideas out there, would I be interested in making a game for his company? It was Colin's Last Stand at the time, so it was gonna and I told him I'm working on this game Habroxia 1, and I actually was meaning to contact him, and I was like, this is funny that you're emailing me out of the blue because I was gonna ask him permission to use his name in the game. I don't think it would have mattered. It's not like it's an offensive thing to have someone named Colin in the game. Like I don't know if I even need to ask for permission, but I'd plan to anyway, is what I'm getting at. And yeah, I was like, yeah, let's talk about this Habroxia 1 game, and he ended up doing that Let's Play after he found out he was in it and he got a early code.
That's funny. Yeah, because I just pulled up the video now. I'm just kind of like looking at it for it. For you, I guess what was Habroxia like? Did it feel like a big release for you as like the developer of it at the time? Because I know like how much you had your hand in the pie of everything. Um, when you were like kind of on the cups of that, like did you really like feel like, hey, this is like a big step up for me, or like what was like your headspace at right before you released in September?
Yeah, I knew I had taken a big step up in my work, and as well that the addition of hiring artists for that game had played a huge role in upping the quality of the game, and that's why I like when I was talking to Colin, he was like pitching me these ideas. I was like, yo, just wait a minute. I want you to see this next game because like we can make more than just another Perils like game, which I think is what he pitched at the time, something like Perils, but sacred symbols themed. And I was like, yeah, we I can like because that's what I really like to do. I like to mess around in all sorts of different kinds of genres and ideas, and I hope to continue to do that over my career. Just make games in all sorts of different areas. Probably in 2D for the whole time, but I want to explore all sorts of different kinds of spaces.
Do you think you're planning on sticking with Game Maker for a while? Have you thought of any other engines at all, or where are you kind of at engine wise with your headspace now that you're not stuck with the lowest? Because I know you guys were always like, okay, if it runs on Vita, then we can upport it to everything else. Now that you're not really constrained by the Vita, do you think you're going to move off of Game Maker, or do you think you'll stick with it for a while?
I don't think the Vita will impact that decision, but I'll how I look at it is I only know how to make games uh, in Game Maker right now, and it would be an investment of time to learn a new engine. So unless I reach a point where I'm frustrated by my lack of ability to do something within Game Maker or to release on certain platforms or something like that, I don't have reason to investigate other options. So I just haven't really I mean I'm definitely open to the idea if it becomes necessary, but for now I'm not really looking elsewhere.
Barry, hear me out. Twin Breaker 3D on Unreal Engine 5.
I definitely think there's something to the nature of the Brick Breaker being in 3D. Like that really worked for Shatter, but I don't know, man. Like I think about 3D and I think of things I might want to play around with at some point. But I think like the strategy RPG is that's kind of like a 3D 2D hybrid, I guess, but that's gonna be the first 3D game we make
Mm-hmm.
now that I think about it because we have to rotate the camera and whatnot.
Oh, interesting. See,
But
I
other
would
than
have
that,
thought
I
I would have
guess
thought it would have been a lot more static for the RPG. So you're thinking of definitely more of kind of like a
no, that's
isometric.
no. So what? So for the RPG that we're working on currently, that's a typical turn-based JRPG. But what I'm talking about is the tactical RPG, like a Final Fantasy Tactics style game,
Mm-hmm.
where you're looking at over the battlefield and rotating and whatnot. That's something we want to make. I don't know, maybe like 10 years down the line or something like that, right? But
I mean, at least with that, you kind of have something to go off of. Like, at least for me, like I don't know how you feel about it. I look at Project Triangle Strategy, and I'm like, this game looks so. And this is coming from someone who actually didn't like Octopath Traveler at all. I thought that really outstayed its welcome for me, especially visually and playing it. Like Triangle Strategy, I'm like, geez, please don't be bad. Like that game looks so good and it plays so good, and it's like, well, that's one of those first ones of like this I think could be what Octopath was trying to really do. Even though I mean I say that's going to be the next big thing. Like in honesty, it's going to be Dragon Quest III HD. But for me, not thinking of Dragon Quest at least, like Triangle Strategy is like that's like my perfect take on if you had to make Final Fantasy Tactics 3D. Like that's what you do.
yeah, so have you played the demo for that then? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I
The demo
haven't
for
played the
that is.
demo yet.
I mean, at this point, I'm actually going to say don't even play it. The demo, I think, took me like 5 hours to beat. It is insanely long.
Okay. So I've seen the videos for that and it looks great. The visual direction and the gameplay looks great. Yeah, the strategy RPG genre is one that I guess I'm kind of picky about. Like there's lots of games that you can tell that a lot of work went into them and they're well made, but it's just like, oh, this one doesn't gel with me, you know? And I always felt like those the Final Fantasy Tactic, like the original and the Game Boy Advance and the DS games, those are the three that I really clicked with the most.
How did you feel about Tactics Ogre or like Brigadine? Any of those old like PlayStation 1 and 64 strategy games?
Yeah, Tactics Ogre is probably the closest to the formula, in my opinion. Like it's the one that got it the most right, other than the Final Fantasy Tactics games.
So I don't know how I've not mentioned this to you yet. Dare I ask, how many games would you say are in any level of production at Lillymo in your head right now? If you had to guess.
In any level, see that's a tricky thing because I'm coming up with new game ideas based like every day basically, but I'm always just like posting. It's funny, I always post them on our Discord page, and Colin's just like, that's a cool idea, but like we got 10 years of games to make before we're ready to. But I can't help it. I'm just always coming up with new mechanics or ideas I want to explore. The plan right now is to finish the Perils remake, and then it's pretty much wrapping up right now. But within the next few weeks, we're gonna start full production on the RPG as well as what's the word? Resume production on a Forest Guardian as well, codename Forest Guardian. That's not the real name. So those are the two we're going to be focusing on for the most part. But yeah, there's lots of stuff in the background that we're talking about, sharing ideas with, messing around on.
So this is a weird one. I gotta ask this, but because I never hear enough people mention this. Have you played? Kind of speaking of similar strategy RPGs, have you played Lost Dimension? Irish Nerd was asking in the chat.
I've played it. I've started. Is that the one
It's
where
literally
there's like,
it's literally Valkyria Chronicles meets Danganronpa.
is this the one where there's like randomized traders within your
Yes,
party?
yeah, which is
Yeah,
like
I played this. I
so
played like a
crazy.
few hours of that. That one's really cool. I have a friend who I recommended it to, and he got really into it and ended up beating it. And I haven't played it since, so that's one I've got to go back to.
That's a great one as well. Of like even like since it's been so long for you, you could still start it over from scratch, and it'll still feel like a completely different
Oh, I'll
experience.
have to start it over. Yeah, I don't even remember if I start it now.
That's one of those crazy games, man. Of like it was post PS4, but never came to PS4. It was only PS3 and Vita, and then later
Oh,
on,
okay.
Ghostlight actually published it on PC for the developer themselves, but no one ever thought of giving it like that. That's one of like I feel like if the dev was forward thinking enough, like I think if you put that out now for like 20 or $30 on like next gen and Switch, like I think would do really really good in like a slow month like now.
Yeah, that just reminds me how much I hope that the rumors are true about the PS3 back compat because it's such a shame that games are just like lost. Like if you release on PS4, your game's basically ensured to be available for all time, hopefully. But if you released on PS3, it just no one can buy your game.
I
I just don't
literally
like that.
just hooked up my PS3, like it's right next to me at my office a week ago. Because one of the things I'm going to be doing a lot more on this channel is I'm going to be covering, along with the Vita's anniversary this year, is Kingdom Hearts. And I have one Kingdom Hearts game that I never platinumed on the PS3. Ironically, it was the port of the PSP game. And it was one of those things of going back to the system. It's amazing how much the PS3 holds up except for buying games like digitally. Like playing the PS3 holds up surprisingly well. Running disc off it is hilariously like slow in a way that I didn't even think of was slow. Like you know how playing on the PS5 makes the PS4 seem slow. Going from the PS5 to PS3 is like whoa, like this is weird.
Yeah, back when Sony announced that they were closing the PS3 and the PS Vita store, I went and hooked up my old PS3 and bought a whole shitload of games. But yeah, that's the store. There was some issue with it. I remember that I was like, "There's no buy
It's
icon to
that
buy this
issue is
game."
still there. They have still not even fixed that. Where you have to assume where the buy button is, and you
I
still can't
know.
see
I
it.
just clicked on it, and then I was like complaining about it to people. And I was like, "There's no way to buy these games."
You know
But
what?
then I was like, "You just hit
Ironically,
X."
ironically, the PS3 though was a better store than the Vita store because it still updated the PS3 store with the Vita purchases. Because you could never buy Vita games on the PS4 store, but you could always
Right.
buy them on the PS3 store. And the PS3 store was slow as shit, still is really slow as shit, but it always auto updated. The store never broke in terms of new listings, which was always really really funny. Of like, why did that never break?
Yeah, that's weird that they didn't have just an automated system to handle like the Vita
It was
and
isn't that
not
crazy
mess
thing?
up
It
new
was literally
releases.
somebody's job to update the Vita store, and it went years with, without getting updated. Like it was like
Jeez.
one of the last games before it broke. I think it was like 2018 or something. Ironically, was another video game podcast video game, which kind of leads me to Twin Breaker. Of like, did you guys know at that point that you were not the first video game podcast game on the Vita? Is that a weird thing to think about?
What was the other one? I don't know which game you're referencing.
99 Vitas.
Oh, I didn't know that was a podcast.
Yeah, so check. So this is like such a deep cut. So 99 Vitas is a 2D beat 'em up. It's a very very good one. It's super hard, not amazing, but it's a pretty solid beat 'em up on like everything. It is based off of a Brazilian video game podcast called 99 Vidas, Vidas, And I discovered it because it was actually made by a Brazilian game developer whose name I will now beat myself up for forgetting, but they're a really, really talented dev. Um, they were published, that game was published physically by Strictly Limited, who was German. So this German publisher published this Brazilian video game podcast beat 'em up game on the Vita, and that was the first, at least to my knowledge, console, at least the Vita podcast game. So Twin Breaker was not the first, but at least was, if you are. Most people know about Sacred Symbols, I would say, at least in Western culture, as opposed to a Brazilian video game podcast. But that's one of those funny, weird things out there. It's a really, really solid game. Like, if anyone ever is interested out there, it's super fun. They even like were crazy enough to do online and local multiplayer, which like I think actually doing local multiplayer on Vita is more rare than online.
Yeah. That, I guess maybe in Japan would be more common, I would think, right?
Yeah, but then it was almost one of those things of even at the same time, like it just depended on the type of game. Like you weren't like I could play Twin Breaker multiplayer very easily. Just like give one side of the controller to like someone next to me. I could play Dive Kick very easily. Whereas like, hey, we're doing a beat 'em up as opposed to we're doing a Monster Hunter like game. Oh, thank God, I remembered the name. Qbyte Interactive, Qubyte Interactive. They did a ton of Vita ports, and they actually their last release was the Vita version of Horizon Chase Turbo, which is an excellent, excellent port.
That was that one of the physical only last
Yep.
releases?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I missed out on that one. I saw that one on the, and I was just like, I don't know. I'm not a huge driving guy. It looks kind of cool, but I just didn't know, and like it's not on digital, so I guess I missed my shot.
That's one of those ones of like it's everywhere, whereas like it because it's expensive because it's one of the later games and also it's good. So like when you mix the quality of it's a Vita physical, it released late and it's good, it kind of like makes it really really pricey. So it's like one of those things of, like if you ever have a chance to buy it at around like 40-50 bucks, I would say it's definitely worth it because it's such a it's also one of those fun things of like it's a unique port. Like it's not like they just ported the game, like they actually did a lot of unique work just to make that version run. But it is also one of those things of like it's not so good that like you're not missing out. Like it's not like it's the next Ridge Racer.
Yeah, gotcha. I'm not a huge racing guy, so I probably won't. If it's like,
It's
like it's something I'd check out if it was on a sale or a low digital
yeah,
price.
yeah. It was actually free with Plus last year, which like was around somewhat the same thing. The one thing I will say is if you like stuff like Outrun, it's literally just a love letter to Outrun. So it's not like it's trying to be simmy. It's very very arcade racy.
Yeah, those are the only ones I can really handle are the arcade style ones.
No GT on PSP got Gran Turismo. PS Vita no Gran Turismo though.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
not patient enough to play like a Gran Turismo. I just like drive into the walls, man.
Ironically, I think GT7 is going to be my first one just because of I want to see what the hell they do with that controller because I think they could do some cool stuff with that thing.
Yeah, for sure with the shoulder buttons.
Oh man, Tim Hewis in the chat says I've always wanted Habroxia physically, but it's so expensive now. I'm gonna look this up, and I'll ask this as a question for you while we're looking it up for it, because that only got a physical on Vita. Have you ever thought of doing another port of Habroxia One? Well, not another port of like making the other systems available physically.
I mean, if there was a publisher that wanted to do that, we'd totally be game. I don't know if that would be a. I guess we could pitch that.
I don't know
Our,
if you know
our
this. There are a lot of physical publishers for Switch and PS4.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. One thing we had talked, well, we had at one point we were thinking about doing some sort of physical collection and see if we could get that on every system. But yeah, we're gonna talk to some physical publishers now that Perils is wrapping up and see what we can work out. Because yeah, I love having these. Like I've got all of my physical games that we've released right beside me or on my desk. I love looking at them. I love doing these. I love commissioning the art for them. We got an artist we work with on multiple projects now, Lachlan. He's just finished a gorgeous potential physical cover for a Perils remake. So hopefully that'll come to be.
If you had to guess, how much do you think Habroxia 1 is going for right now on eBay?
I mean, there wasn't that many copies, so I'd be surprised if any are selling still recently. But I don't know, what, 50 or $60, maybe more. I don't know.
Our current listing is 175 plus
That's pretty.
shipping.
That's pretty crazy.
Is that like weird? Like not only to like have your game out there, but like that people like wow, people want to buy my game, and then be like, wow, people scalp my game. That's weird.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's almost like like flattery, right? It's like someone wants to pay, but at the same time, they're probably not paying it because
I
they
mean,
want
I'm looking
my
at it now.
game that
I've
bad.
got to see. I've got to see what is like the what's the last person who bought Habroxia for like those prices. Because like asking is always different than what they're selling for. The last copy of Habroxia 1 that sold was December 27th on eBay. Someone paid $115 for it physically.
Yeah,
Holy
that's
moly! Never mind. We've got to beat someone on Christmas Eve bought a physical copy from the UK for $220.
that's I see. I don't. I would. It's like conflicting, right? Because it's like flattery that someone would pay that much, but like I was saying, I don't think people are buying it for that much because they like love the game. If they are, that's kind of cool. But I feel like maybe that's just someone who's trying to complete their Vita collection, and that hurts to see that they're having to do that.
If it makes you
You
feel
know, if they're like
better,
a physical collector.
if it makes you feel better, people on Macari were a lot nicer. 6 months ago, people were selling copies for $50 even. That seems more fair.
Yeah, it's weird. I remember seeing. So sometimes, like right when we do the pre-order or whatever, when we did it on East Asia Soft or sorry on Play Asia, as soon as the listing goes up, you see like listings go up on eBay or something like that for like some higher price. And I want to just like be like people like don't buy it. You can still buy it from the original source right now for much less.
The funniest part about that was actually, yeah, you guys have you have one of the weirdest honors. You all with Habroxia 2 got the last open pre-order Vita game.
Yeah, we thought that was the best way to go. We were lucky to have that option,
Do
and
you even remember what? Because you guys had originally announced. Actually, no, Colin had announced on the podcast the
that would be a
numbers.
set amount. Yeah,
And everyone started losing their shit because it was like,
yeah,
oh
yeah.
god, this is not gonna be good.
Well, it was good that they spoke out because East Asia Soft and Play Asia saw that and they gave us an opportunity that not many publishers were offered, I guess, or I don't know how many they offered it to, frankly, but
You are the
yeah,
only
it seemed
ones.
like the right way to
I have
go.
looked with. I've talked to all their other publishers through the submission crunch thing. You guys were the only ones who got that. Or actually,
Yeah.
because I know others asked about it, but the only one that kind of got close was I know Unmetal almost was open pre-order, but it was too late. And oh, there was one more. Oh, Horizon Chase Turbo, and you can tell because those got almost 3,000 each.
Dang, yeah, well, shout out to the public, like Play Asia and East Asia Soft for accommodating that.
But I mean, honestly, it's like that's got to be one of those really kind of humbling moments, though, of like, because I remember I was listening to that podcast, and I was one of the first people to actually ask the people at East Asia Soft. I was like, hey, because I know it's not on sale yet, but I knew cart production was almost ready because I knew the deadline. I was like, hey, if you guys can go back on this, you will save yourself a world of hurt. Because it was one of those things of like, it's the inevitable thing of like, it's gonna sell out, you know? But like, if you can do anything to kind of alleviate that, it's just gonna make everybody look better. And kind of going back to that whole thing with like Project Sense of like, the more transparent you can be, the best case scenario for everybody. And so even in a situation like that, where now you look at copies like of Habroxia 2 still go for like around $40 or $50. Like they're not in like hard supply. And actually the same thing with Twin Breaker. Twin Breaker was also going to be limited. and then got an open pre-order of like, thank God.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, here's another weird one though, because you got to do PS4 versions of Habroxia 2 and Twin Breaker. Do you have a preferred version? I know it's like probably not nice to be like a Sophie's Choice one for it, but like for me, as someone who's played both of those games on all of the systems they've released on, they like just something for me like, and I know I'm extremely biased, like they just feel so much more at home playing it on like my OLED Vita screen than like my giant TV.
Yeah, that's I think let me think for a second. I think that I'm thinking over each game. So yeah, with Perils, when I first made Perils, I released it only on PS4, and then I had to rework it in a different engine to get it on Vita, and I redid the levels and made it a little bit better. And so yeah, that was the best version period at that time. And I ended up porting those changes to PS4, and then
Oh dang!
they both ran.
I was just about to say I did not know the original PS4 was different. I forgot they'd released separately.
Yeah, at the time I didn't think I'd be able to get a Vita dev kit, but that was a that was an interesting story. But
Do you remember what system? Not what system. What engine did you make PS4 on?
oh, it wasn't. So it's the same. It's Game Maker, but I was working in Game Maker Studio 2, which didn't
Oh,
support
okay.
Vita.
Gotcha.
So I had to bring my work back. It's funny. I realize now I could have done that. It took like 3 months to do. I could have done it so much more efficiently now, just that I'm more familiar with the different
Tool
engines.
set.
But
Hmm.
yeah. Um, so yeah, for that one, I always felt it played best on Vita, and they ran pretty much identical, but it just feels good to have it in your hands, like you're saying, on that screen with the nice controls. And then Habroxia, yeah, they ran the same. So again, the same thing. I think with Habroxia 2, at first, there were some slight concessions to get it running on the Vita. But with the update, we ended up pretty much correcting every single little thing that bugged me in my nitpicky way before time was up. So we managed to patch that to a state where I would consider it my favorite version of that game as well. So yeah, I think for all of them, I prefer it
One of
on
my
Vita.
favorite things though about a game getting a physical release is then that 1.0 build is kind of forever on that physical cart if you choose not to update it. So like if you're
Hmm.
a weirdo like me and you like to look at like 1.0 builds, like if you downloaded Habroxia 2 at launch, that's a different game than that 1.0 build. And it's kind of funny to like then like go back and like compare them just to be like look at the minor changes and like how much they add up over time.
Yeah, for sure. We actually tried to add like quite a bit with that update. That was kind of the inspiration for our so we bought back the rights to our games on all platforms recently before we had East Asia Soft Publishing on Xbox and Switch. And I've been like meditating on like how to handle all of our games and the company and going forward and stuff. And I just felt like I wanted to like update all of these games in a way that they're just as best as we can present them, not necessarily to like remake them the way we're doing with Perils now, but yeah, for Habroxia 2, we got it to a really good state that I'm really pleased with. And we're gonna do the same for Twin Breaker and for Habroxia 1, and then we're gonna bring those updates out everywhere as well.
So I don't know if anyone has really told you this, but were you surprised at the overall reception? Because we talked about like how Habroxia 1 was a really, really big step up. I think Habroxia 2 just kind of like added on in so many more ways a lot of people weren't really expecting, not only from like having a story to the music and the difficulty and all the different like stuff like New Game Plus. When End of Year came out, I thought it was so funny. I saw that game pop up on so many people's Vita Game of the Year list, and it was so funny to me because it was such an early 2021 game that it was just like one of those like, wow, that's like really crazy. But then it was like one of those things of like, is that like weird for you of like seeing a game like you would probably not think traditionally would be like a game of the year, but like even though there are less choices, is that still kind of like a is that like a humbling thing to like see? Because I feel like out of all of your games, Habroxia 2 is easily like the one I see pop brought up the most in terms of ones people really really like and really really recommend.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm not. I mean, I'm not going to claim we're the best game of the year, but I agree with you that, or on that list or whatever. But I agree that it's our best game, and I genuinely believe that with each game, I get better, the team gets better, we work better together, we bring more people in. Um, so yeah, I feel like that's kind of my job is to get better at what I do, and I'm super proud with what we did with Habroxia too, and I feel the same way with this Perils remake. I mean, I feel like what I keep saying is I feel like we've taken our worst game and turned it into our best game. I feel like when people play the new Perils, they're gonna feel that it holds up to the standard of Habroxia 2, and hopefully for some people it'll be their new favorite of ours.
That's awesome. I'm super excited. I'm gonna look into the deep cirky gross underbellies of seeing if I can find a unpatched version of the PS4 one just to be morbidly curious and compare to the Vita version now because I somehow missed that they were a different experience, and now you've got me very morbidly curious to check out the like OG release of Perils 1 on PS4.
Yeah, I'd have to like think back on what even changed. There's like a few new enemies like that like donut that like shoots projectiles. It's funny to think about it now because like that's like an update that happened, but now like that update is like the old version to me. I'm used to thinking of the new update. That's the new
Oh,
game.
here we go. I've been meaning to think of a good way to interject this, and I know I'm going to be heartbroken by your answer. Did at any point in development for this new version of Peril, did you think of including the original as like an unlockable because of how different it is?
Um, so I didn't think of, like we're trying to bundle them together so that you'll still get the old version as well. But in terms of within the game itself, Lachlan mentioned the idea of like you know how some of those games have the switch where you can like switch on and off
That
between
that was
the,
exactly what
the
I was thinking of, like whether it be like Wonder Boy or any of those games where you can be like old one, new one.
yeah, that's just totally not possible though, to be brutally honest, because we've completely changed. Like the level designs have completely changed. Um, the scope of the game's completely changed. The size of the characters completely changed. The enemies have changed. Like it's not the same game anymore. So it's just like I was building it so that for the longest time I was building it like as like a patch, right? So like everything had to work still. Like all the stats still had to work the same. It was like not until near the end I finally broke off of that aspect of it. But yeah, that just wouldn't be possible due to how much it's changed. But I like when games do that. I think that's really cool.
So hopefully to end on a less sad question for me and anyone else who's curious. For you, if you're able to get inside baseball, if not, no big deal. Is there any version of your games where the Vita is not like the highest seller? Because I'm trying to think, and I remember at launch I know Habroxia and Twin Breaker were, but like where would you say now that it's released on so many different platforms, like where does the Vita kind of rank in terms of sales from Perils, Habroxia 1, Twin Breaker, Habroxia 2?
Uh, so the thing about that is we don't really get proper numbers for digital sales. Like because we're a cross-buy bundle, I think it's in America that they just don't tell you
It's just lumped
which
together.
games. Yeah. So I can look at like the physicals and yeah, for physical, it only Habroxia only released on Vita, and we sold. I have 1250 is the number of copies that were produced of Habroxia 1. And then for Twin Breaker, I have 2,000 copies of the Vita version versus 1550 of PS4. So Vita, the better seller there physically. And pardon me, Habroxia 2, we have Um, 1563 is a weird. I guess that's that whole as many copies as are ordered thing on Vita, and 935 on PS4.
So what's crazy about that, and I don't even know if you knew this, unless someone has said it and I'm not aware of, that is actually the first time anyone has said how many copies of Habroxia 2 were made physically. Because the decision was so last minute, they never updated the certificate to say, like, it told you got number blank of blank, but it didn't say you've got this of this many. It was just saying, oh, you got number 560 or whatever. So that's really interesting to kind of see how that lined up for that, especially with how close to the print run limit the PS4 version was for Habroxia 2. But no, that's really interesting how close 2 was to Twin Breaker, because I always figured Twin Breaker sold exponentially more on Vita than Habroxia 2 would have physically. So that's really interesting. It was only off by like 500.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was probably just like there's so many fans of Sacred Symbols and Collins and whatnot that they even if they weren't going to play it, maybe even they would just buy it to support them.
Opportunities are you ever going to have to put Colin Moriarty's face and Chris Reagan on a box?
Yeah, exactly.
Because, like, let's be honest. Like, I don't know how many of the East Asia Soft games you have. As someone who's dumb and owns all of them, Twin Breaker is easily the one that's it's like, what is this one?
Stands out. Yeah, that's great.
Which is so awesome, because it's like, here you go. You've got Root Double, this 600-hour visual novel from Japan. That's a East Asia Soft exclusive. It's this amazing tale of time travel, mystery, and horror. Oh, and also here's this block-breaking game that's based off a podcast with a very long
there
story.
There are faces on it.
Exactly. Oh, you know what? If you could say it or not, because I was going to test you, but I had completely lost track of time, and I promise I'm going to let you free. Do you remember the first thing you ever DM'd me on Twitter?
No, I don't remember at all. What was it?
If you're able to comment on this or not, because I was scrolling up, I don't even know what had brought this to my mind. You had sent me a teaser for the Twin Breaker Vita theme.
Oh God, dude, I was just trying to deal with that like a couple days ago with Ben. Poor
Really?
Poor Ben's taken on my frustrations with trying to deal with all the back ends and stuff, and we were trying to get those Vita themes out. I'll tell you the whole story. We were trying to get those the Vita and PS4 Twin Breaker themes out with our game for free on the same day as like separate items. Like you didn't have to buy the game, you could just go in under themes or whatever. But then we found out on the day of release when it was set to go live, like the thing just on the back end just updates and says, "Oh, set to go live the next day." And you know what I mean? It just keeps doing that. It doesn't go live. So we're contacting our people, and I'm asking them what's going on, and they're like, "Yeah, you can't do that anymore. You can't just put out a theme. You can't just put out avatars and give them to people." They're like, "You can do it if it's part of a bundle, but like the bundle's already been on sale." So I tried to get them to work it out so that they could like retroactively make it work. Like if you have bought the game, you'll get the themes, you'll get the avatars, and I just kept trying to communicate with them and make that happen. And you know, they not good communication, and it doesn't happen basically. And we tried to do it again just recently, and that's when I discovered the whole you can't attach Vita cross-buy to new bundles anymore. So we were gonna update that like I don't know, like a week or two ago or something like that. Ben was he had it all sorted out, and we put in the requests. So then it was like, okay, so if we update this cross-buy bundle now, and we can't add the Vita game back in, are we adding the themes for people, and now they're not going to be able to get the Vita game anymore? So we just couldn't do it.
It was so weird, because I remember in the early days of this, I guess 2020, I tried bugging anyone I could at Sony to find out about this because there were other devs I knew who were working on Vita themes. And I discovered no one at Sony ever announced that avatars and themes, the rules had changed.
I know, and when I don't mean to vent, but like when I contacted them, they're talking to me like I should have known already. And I was like, what do you, like, no one told me anything. It went through submission and passed.
It's
just a big mess.
It's the weirdest thing because it's like at the end of the day, does it matter? No. But like, it's so weird. Like, I almost give it more of a pass if it was like just a cross-buy thing. But like, literally, if you had wanted to put it out as just a theme on sale, you couldn't even do that. Like, that's how dumb it had gotten. Like, they were just like, no more themes. Because at a certain point, Sony just viewed themes and avatars as clutter. Which, like, honestly, they were.
Well, it was, but it was their fault. They just needed to organize it.
Yeah.
Just don't post that shit in the new releases. Put it in its own section.
Which also never made sense, because I don't know if you've ever gone to the Japanese store. The Japanese store is immaculate. Like, the way they organized it, like, they never... like, seriously, like, even still, like, the Japanese store, like, has a really, really good amount of organization and everything on there. They were getting themes literally until the store stopped accepting submissions. Like, there were themes made all the way up until last year, which is crazy.
Yeah. If you bought Twin Breaker, I think, in Asia, I think you did get them because we warned East Asia Soft. I think it was like a staggered release or something like that.
The rare theme. Oh my god.
I know. There's like one person out there with a Chris avatar that I've seen, because you know how like you see someone with an avatar, you can see how many have it on PSN profiles or whatever.
I'm like,
every once in a while I see like a Japanese name with just like Chris or Colin.
I hate that you told me that, because now
it's
I have
super rare.
I have a new level of envy for Asian people. I'll never be able to subside now. That is the weirdest thing now. So someone, if you want to make a really clickbaity video out there, you now know the rarest Vita theme in avatars. That is so funny. Oh my god. Wow, that is so crazy. I never knew, because like maybe I missed it. I don't even think I ever saw East Asia Soft like advertise that for their digital version. That's so funny.
Oh, I just remembered another like, really funny tidbit from that time. You request vouchers through an automated system for you did for the Vita EU voucher codes, like to give to press and reviewers. Mm-hmm. And when we had our cross-buy bundle set up all properly, but when we submitted our ticket, the codes we got entitled people to just the theme, I think, or the theme in the PS4 game. It was like the PS Vita theme in the PS4 game. So there's a few reviewers out there that got it as well, I think, or something.
Incredible, yeah. The envy there's no limit to it. But that seems like a better place to end it than now. Well, thank you. At least this story has an ending, so I'm glad there's an ending to it. I'm more jealous of Europeans and Asians than I would have ever thought an hour ago. But Barry, thank you so much for letting me steal so much of your time tonight, and I guess half getting nostalgic about the Vita and half just kind of talking work with you. So it's such a blast getting to chat with you. And everyone watching live, the amount of viewers kept increasing, so I don't know why that happened at like 9 o'clock at night my time, but thank you all for watching this live, or if you watch it on YouTube the next day. But Barry, where can people find you and give you all their money?
Well, you can follow Lillymo Games on Twitter if you want updates from us, and yeah, you can find our games on every platform. We only have Twin Breaker and Habroxia 2 out on Steam, but we'll change that. Other than that, our games are everywhere, I think, yeah.
Awesome. And yeah, look out for not one but 9,000 other Lillymo game ideas happening in the future, and one hopefully sooner than later. So everybody be excited. As someone I know, I'd be very biased, but yeah, as someone who's played all of these games, I cannot recommend them enough. They are very interesting, all for their own reasons.
Thank you.
But yeah, actually, because I don't really have like a Patreon or anything, just because this is just me kind of doing this on my own free time, I guess. Let's end this by both of us. If you want to pull whatever out of your ass, or just look at your shelf and whatever things about it. Let's just say someone is listening to the show. They have a Vita, but they have no games. What is the first game that comes to mind for you that you would recommend to anybody who bought the system? Like, what is your first recommendation that's not your own game?
Jeez. I mean, it would definitely depend on what they're looking for, so it's so hard to answer.
Let's say it's a clone of yourself. You're recommending a game to yourself. You've traveled
My
back in
favorite
time.
Vita game. I'm so hard at choosing a favorite. uh, Maybe this is a well. How about how about Grand Kingdom? How about that? Fuck it, I'll just say that one. I love that one.
That is a.
I got so many. I love it.
That is
Dude, I
an
was going through like 10
inspired
titles in my head.
choice. I love Grand Kingdom. Grand Kingdom, not only an amazingly underrated Spike Chunsoft game, an awesome collector's edition that came in not one but two giant fucking boxes. That was an awesome game. Man, you're gonna make my choice look like shit. I was gonna go for Gumbari Super Strikers. If you all, I guess another RPG. If you like XCOM or Fire Emblem, it's literally Fire Emblem meets soccer, and it's a very, very fun, very quick pick up and play game. It's on literally everything, but you can buy it digitally still on the Vita. Really good port by Ratalaika, super fun, and the dev who made it is just super, super nice. But yeah, Grand Kingdom, man. That's like another one of like. I don't even think Japan knew how much they were flexing when they did some games sometimes, because like there are just so many games I just think of that I'm like, man, that game is so good, but no one thinks about it. no one ever thinks about some of these.
I still think about it.
All right, well, everybody out there, thank you so much for listening, whether it be live or whatever. I will see you hopefully soon for the next Vita Life podcast. And if you have someone you would like me to try and beg to come on the show, always leave that in the comments, or you can send me a tweet on Twitter at Torchwood4SP. But yeah, goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
All right, I am 17 minutes